because it's not a thing about power. It's a thing about assigned responsibilities. So if you work to try and eliminate that, that's where you can have a little bit more open kind of and transparent relationship as a team, to where you're not so scared to actually bring up some things to be like, hey, sir, can I talk to you something for a minute? I'm like, sure. And once we offer them that opportunity, we can get to a little bit more down to the brass tacks of here's something that's going on, and that person feels more in a safe environment that they can share their thoughts because they're not so afraid of the power dynamic between the two. You're tuned in to the Breaking Red podcast, the show for rising military leaders who want to trailblaze the future. We tackle the profession of arms with creative solutions to dynamic issues. This isn't your typical leadership course, so be ready to step up your game and define the future. I am your host, Gabriel Gabe Roccavilla. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody, to Breaking Red podcast. Gabe Rock back on the mic once again. Very excited. This is episode 17, and going to be talking about going back to some topics to help demystify this crazy thing called leadership. So actually going to go back to some user-provided feedback. This time was from a senior NCO I had the privilege of working with, Amanda DeFazio, and the topic that she recommended was just, all she wrote was the follower and leader dynamic. Not much more than just those words, and that was okay. I actually didn't mind that prompt, because it forced me to figure out what I really wanted to talk about, organize my thoughts, and then here's my shot. So, okay, follower and leader dynamic. So I think one of the first things I was thinking about was, so who serves who? And in the follower and leader, it seems kind of obvious, right? The leader is in the lead, and then the follower is following. And that also makes sense when you think about military organizations. We all, a military is designed for a purpose of with established roles of a rank, customs and courtesies and authority, because in our profession of arms, there's a reason why we have the rank. But those ranks don't necessarily carry and explain the entire follower and leader dynamic, in my opinion anyway. Again, it seems pretty obvious, right? Officers are in the lead, enlisted are in the follow positions. And then even within those things, you have senior enlisted, junior enlisted, senior officers, junior officers of the like. Inevitably, we all obviously work for the people. And so we still always, everybody in the military, all the way up to Chief Goldfein, has some sort of boss that they work for, whether it be the Secretary of Defense or the President or any of any certain position within a civilian government. That's who at least the United States military is built to serve. And so it does offer the dynamic to, so who serves who? And when I think about that, I started to think about my current job, I should say, very, very crazy dynamic places with a lot of things going on in the cyber world. And so I work with a Tech Sergeant Osawa. And he is very, very smart. He's actually Master Sergeant Select. And so when we work together, he's a fire and forget senior NCO. I just give him stuff, and then he comes back to me. He said, sir, we got this stuff going on. Here's the information that we need to talk about to leadership, and this is how I organize stuff. And we're covering down on two separate things. He's taking care of the projects that he's been assigned, and I've been doing the same thing. And I have to trust exactly what he's going to say. So I just say, Roger, got it. Let me roll him to the brief, and then we'll present his leadership accordingly. So inevitably, in this relationship, he's a tech sergeant, I'm a lieutenant colonel. However, he is leading. He is leading me because he is closest to the problem. He has the most training and experience to deal with and solve the problem. So it would be stupid for me to be like, no, I don't think we should be doing that. Obviously, we have a certain discussion, and it's not just a rote, I'm just going to, depending on the timing of everything. But I know I'm not technically savvy enough to question what he's talking about. What I hear is he explains to me how his thought process and the logic that he goes through to derive his technical decisions. I think about it, we talk about it, and then we move forward. But at no point, I know my limitations, and I have to follow his lead in the technical space. So that in dynamic, even with our assigned ranks and positions, with me being the chief of operations, he's a battle station lead. He's leading, not me. And so in that specific instance, so I think it's important for everybody to know that you can have different dynamics to where who serves who, it really could be the junior person. It's going to be the person that's closest to the problem, who has the most information, the people on the front line. Those are the ones who are actually leading, and people in a leadership position are the ones, technically in the leadership position, are actually following. And so I don't get caught up too much in the words of follower and leader, because I believe it all depends. It's very contextual in the situation, and sometimes the roles can be flipped. But if you don't think about it, and you're always going to be you're really thinking about the success of the team and mission accomplishment, those things kind of go away. Everybody just knows their responsibilities, and that's what really it comes down to. Even between ranks and certain kind of positions, you're not necessarily a leader or a follower. You're just assigned different types of responsibilities. So me as a former squadron commander, I had specific roles or responsibilities. When you get that C prefix, you have certain things you're responsible for. What that also meant was I was not on the front lines on keyboard doing certain technical things. I had airmen, senior NCOs doing those things, and those were their responsibilities. Their responsibility was to take care of, defend the network, to interface with our mission partners, to make sure that any of the base level comm squadron things we were responsible for was carried out in a professional manner. So all of us understood our responsibilities, and that's what made us an effective team, in my opinion, is that we knew what our job was. We worked to do it well. We relied on each other for experience, and we weren't afraid to have someone double check our homework and be like, hey, sir, so can you review this thing? I have this idea. I just want to make sure you're cool with it. So it's not necessarily, am I cool with it? I think it's just a thing of asking for my opinion that could this be successful? And a lot of times I would say it may not be, but let's go with it, because I'm not sure this is the first time we tried something out. And so I want to follow their lead, yet my responsibility is to give the thumbs up, and then we move forward from there. So that's the who serves who often changes day to day, situation to situation. Second item. So again, on one of the professional development Facebook groups I'm on, the military officer professional development thing, I posted this meme. It was the Drake with the happy face and the not so happy face, and in there is a quote that says, "Managers say he works for me, and leaders say I work for him." So that was the meme. And then the Facebook post, I'm just going to read it. It goes like this: "Throughout my career, my family and I would often see members of my unit in town. They would say, 'Hi, sir,' and I always stopped and chatted for a bit. I quickly introduced them to my family and always said, 'Name is someone Dad works with.' I never said, 'Name works for me,' because I didn't want to give the impression to my kids or anyone else that I was so important." There was a lot of O's. "So important that people work for me." Truth be told, I believe leaders should lead from the front by saying we work for our teams, not the other way around, or with our teams, not the other way around. Words have meaning, and I offer the small change can have large impacts. And so I really believe that. A lot of times, I was very cognizant of that during my second command tour. In larger public forums, I always said, "This is the squadron that I work with. I'm assigned to this squadron." And people would ask me, what position are you from? It doesn't matter. I work within the squadron. The logic is, once you understand I'm a lieutenant colonel and stuff like that, I can only be one of two positions. And so I think 2 and 2 put together, they figured out I'm the commander. But it wasn't I just don't talk about it like that. I wanted them to understand and respect me for the work that I was contributing to whatever I was doing with them and why we were interacting, not because I just happened to be in a leadership position. And even when I talk to other people about people in my squadron, it was definitely, I get to work with them. It's a privilege. I work side by side with a lot of smart men and women, and I didn't want to be like, I often met the opposite, where other people would constantly say, "Oh yeah, he works for me. Oh yeah, they work for me." I'm like, yeah, I get, it's inherent. I get it. You have to say it like that. I know they work for you. You're an officer. They're enlisted or something like that. But what I heard was it was a power dynamic. It's where people want to say that because they want to seem or expose this certain sort of position that, like, I'm so important that I have people working for me. Like, okay, I guess if that makes you feel better. For me, it's always been and I offer to you that it should be more of a humbling position to say, like, no, I get the privilege to work with. You could say with or for, up to you. I actually like the idea of saying with. And the reason why is because I think that it's it just eliminates some of the power relationship. And that's what I wanted try and minimize, because it's not a thing about power, it's a thing about assigned responsibilities. So if you work to try and eliminate that, that's where you can have a little bit more open kind of and transparent relationship as a team, to where you're not so scared to actually bring up some things to be like, hey, sir, can I talk to you something for a minute? I'm like, sure. And once we offer them that opportunity, we can get to a little bit more down to the brass tacks of here's something that's going on, and that person feels more in a safe environment that they can share their thoughts, because they're not so afraid of the power dynamic between the two. We just have different assigned responsibilities, but we're on the same team, and that's more important to me. So and other times it would be, I'd be out and about with my family, and someone else would say like, hi, sir. And they would start talking to me like, hey, sir, so I heard about this thing about you. I was like, and if they're not in uniform, that makes it even more awkward for me. I was like, hey, so I have to just put on the face, because I may not necessarily know their name. So I default to the really shitty, like, hey, bud, or hey, you, or something like that. And I try and hold it together to not embarrass myself or the other person, because whatever they were excited to talk to me about, I have to match that. And a lot of times, some of the what used to happen anyway is like everybody would hear about me, and then they heard it like second or third hand. Like there'd be someone from my squadron was attending like a PME class, and then somehow my name was talked about for good and bad reasons. Maybe bad is a strong word, but for certain reasons. And then they'd be like, hey, so you're a such and such as a squadron commander, right? I'm like, uh-huh. And then we start talking about stuff, and then my wife or my kids would be like, so do you work with them too? And I wanted to make sure that they're saying, do they work with you, as opposed to, hey, Dad, do they work for you? Because it just seems kind of weird. I don't know if my kids still don't necessarily understand the scope of responsibility I used to have as a squadron commander. They just know that I do certain things, and I talk with I work with really, really smart people, because that's what I tell them. But it's not a thing of saying like, oh, I'm responsible for X, Y, Z, because it's not a big deal. Maybe when they're older, we'll talk about it. But like, actually, they're old enough. I probably could talk about them as teenagers anyway. Benjamin's going to be 13 on the 19th of December, which is ridiculous. And that happens to be my same commissioning date, of which 19 December, I will have been in the Air Force for 18 years. Yeah. And so that sounds ridiculous as well. 18 years in the Air Force, 13-year-old teenager. Anyway, I work hard to make sure that words have meaning. And so really think about saying, I work with him, instead of he works for me. So last but not least, I believe the leadership and followership dynamic, to be good at one role, you must be willing to work really, really hard as the other. Some of that is forced, because when you come into the military, you start off as a junior, whatever, enlisted or officer, and you have to work your way up. But you have to work hard. And then there's going to be opportunities to where you can actually take a leadership position, right? And even for senior airmen, I push them to see like, hey, what do you want to do? And I'm offering them opportunities, because I want them to get comfortable with making decisions, coming up with ideas, continuous learning, experimenting, failing, and but part of the team. And so when they start to build that level of confidence, when they start to ascend the ranks as far as being an NCO or a captain or a major, they've built in some confidence based on legit experience, not just because of their rank, but because they've actually done shit. That's the kind of stuff that adds value to a team. So again, you want to be working hard, whatever position is, to develop the right solution, execute, debrief, learn some stuff, adjust, and then do it again, and bring other people along with you. Sharing your lessons learned, like, hey, we tried to do this before, it probably didn't work well. And sometimes people are going to say that to you, and you'll be like, all right, cool, but let me just try it again, because maybe their attempt can be different, as long as it's not completely going to jump off the ledge. Sometimes you have to give people that freedom of maneuver. I've had that time where, even my current job, where I'm trying to do things, and people are like, oh, we tried to do this like 2 years ago. But like, yeah, but I wasn't here though 2 years ago. And I'm very confident in the way that I can do it. And the environment has changed before. We have a change in leadership, and leadership wants to have certain things done now, like this way. So you have to give me a chance and just trust me. And then 9 times out of 10, I'm successful at it, because I work hard to make sure I understand the environment, I bring along people with me, and I know how to operate as both a follower and a leader simultaneously. In the same time, when you're doing these kind of things, you want to make sure you find those mentors to help who can spend the time to help you understand the reasoning behind some of the decisions. So this is where the you're going to have to understand at the speed of how crazy things are going at work, where you can call the timeout and be like, hey, sir, hey, ma'am, I need to understand exactly why we have to do certain things like this. Because some things may not click, and they're going to be like, we just need to move forward. Sometimes the speed of the professional arms doesn't allow you to take that time, and you have to move forward. But at some point in time, you need to circle back or take a time out and be like, why are we doing this? Are there pieces of this puzzle that I don't understand? Not necessarily you're not privy to, you just don't understand. And that could inform exactly the better solution for you to be a good follower and leader, because you're trying to, whichever role you're in, you're just trying to deliver a solution to a problem, but you only can do that with a best informed decision. And no one can necessarily blame you if you don't have all the pieces of the information. Be like, it's kind of unfair to say, yeah, you didn't solve the puzzle because you were missing 6 pieces of it. Like, well, that's not good. So being able to find those right mentors or even peers to help you develop some feedback loops to become a better follower and leader will help you be successful in these crazy times that we have. So I think that's going to be it for this shorter episode, but it's good to just kind of tackle some of these, demystifying leadership, because I don't really think it needs to be demystified. I think we just need to talk about it at a different angle and realize that, like, it's not just clear cut that, well, followers got to follow or leaders got to lead. And it's not always that simple. And so that was kind of like the precipice of premise. I don't even think I used that word correctly. I know it's premise. The premise of the podcast was that let's talk about things that people may or may not clearly understand and offer a clear way to move forward. So hope this information finds you the right way this weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace. This is Gabe Brock, and thanks for tuning into the Breaking Red podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review so we can improve our work and deliver the best content possible. You can find our community platforms on Facebook and YouTube by searching for Breaking Red Podcast. Keep up with weekly content at our website, projectrise.co, and you can find me on Instagram at GabeRock01. Like, follow, and share Breaking Red podcast content everywhere possible, both the good and the bad. Join our conversations with other rising military leaders that aren't afraid to break red and learn how to rise to your potential.